And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We're talking all the news coming out of Formula One in Japan. Yes, the Japanese Grand Prix now in the history books. What a race Max Verstappen had. But we celebrated Max Verstappen's very good win. We questioned McLaren. There's a bit more news on that. And also, Lewis Hamilton, what is going on with that Ferrari? So here's Mr. Vassar suggesting it's going to be a Quali Championship potentially. What does he mean by that? We'll most certainly get into that. Dirty air, let's just say, dirty air is the theme there. But before we get into that, let's talk about McLaren. And Christian Horner's come out and said something quite interesting. He said, I guess the problem they have is they got two drivers that are fighting for the Drivers' Championship. And they said that's one of the crux of the big issues with the McLaren team. Now, before we get into Stella's thing, I want to talk about the McLaren team and the issue that you have two drivers, and it's very fair, fighting for the World Championship. Now, that's all good if you've got a dominant Mercedes and a Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton in 2014, 15 and 16, but this year you don't have necessarily a dominant car. Now, if any of you remembers Nigel Mansell's failed 1986 season, it was him and Nelson Piquet in the same team. And one of the reasons why, say, Nigel Mansell didn't win a championship with Williams in the 80s was simply because Alain Prost came and stole it from both of them under their noses. Now, if you want a more recent example, we can look at 2007. Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton. Yes, Lewis Hamilton beat Fernando Alonso by countback. They did finish on the same points, but because they had such a fight, it was Kimi Raikkonen that came in like a ninja and absolutely swooped that championship because Ferrari at the time had a number one. Understandably, McLaren had two number one drivers, two greats. And it just didn't really happen, did it? And there is a danger here that if that Red Bull is consistently the second best car behind the McLarens, they could be taking points of each other. So Christian Horner's even come out and he's kind of accepted the fact that they're not going to win the Constructors' Championship. They're going for the drivers. And I think if Max Verstappen can continue these performances, yes, fair play, and it's very much on. But in relation to McLaren's, I'm not saying it's not two and three. No, it's absolutely not disastrous. But Andrea Stella said, I don't think it's so clear that Oscar was faster. Why does he say that? Because lots of people are saying, why didn't Lando let Oscar go? Oscar seemed a lot faster. He was in Lando's DRS for a few laps as well. And he carried on saying, I think Lando was trying to get into Max's slipstream even closer. But any time you went below 1 second, then it was a significant loss of grip. Some may argue, well, Piastri didn't have a significant loss of grip. But anyway, he said, so then Lando was doing a little bit of an elastic today, trying to cool down his tyres and going again. So I don't think it's a situation, he said, where we should judge at face value in terms of what the pace of the car was, which I think, okay, Andrea Stella, fair play to you there. You can maybe use that excuse in Japan. I don't think you could use it in Bahrain coming up because you can pass in Bahrain. Now, in relation to Lando Norris, this was before the Grand Prix, in relation to the tactics he's going to have in his racing, and I think kind of comparing himself to Max in a way, and I think this is quite interesting. He said, I still believe I can be a world champion, but doing it by being a nice guy. I don't have as much of a killer instinct as probably most of the drivers, almost champions, because I was just not brought up that way. He said, I can go and pretend I've got a killer instinct, and a bit of a, being a bit of a, I'm assuming that's a DICK. And he said that might give people that perception. But there are certain things I would not do that other champions have done. Other champions? Is he talking about Max? Yeah, he is talking about Max Verstappen, let's be honest. That was via the media sessions in Japan. And I thought that was quite interesting. He wants to win it on his way. He wants to win it on his terms, a la Damon Hill. Lewis Hamilton as well has won championships without being as aggressive maybe as some others, and a fairly cleanish racer. Yes, everyone has their issues. Everyone's going to have mistakes, but I thought that's quite interesting. And speaking of Lewis Hamilton, he's come out and said, on our side of the garage, we have a bit of a problem with our floor. That's been there for the first three races. And interestingly, this is indeed the first time he's come out and said it. And here's one of the stories on Lewis Hamilton's, problems from Planet F1. They said on board, Lewis's camera reveals not a good sign for Ferrari. Jack Villeneuve has come out and said the lack of rear end grip has to be a huge concern for the Scuderia, and that's something that he had trouble with in the Mercedes, not having the confidence on that rear end. So are Ferrari in trouble? Well, as we know, they qualified P8 for the Grand Prix. He did admit, though, he was happy to get into Q3, given it was quite closely contested. Now, the biggest struggle on Saturday was because Ferrari, after their disqualification from Japan, they've had to raise the ride height. And he said, yes, we are running higher than we would like, but I don't know if everyone else is in the same boat in that respect. That's what Lewis said. And he said, particularly, obviously, after the last race, we're a bit higher than we want to be. It's usually the knock-on effect from a weekend like we had before. And he said that, however, wasn't the only issue with it. He said, looking at the Ferrari, it's not got the most stable rear end, I would have thought. And that's from David Croft. And Villeneuve joined him, saying, I was about to say the Ferrari slides a fair amount. And we're looking at the Ferrari, it's moving around, sliding around. And at that point, heating up the tyres, that's not particularly a good sign for a long run, is it? Absolutely not. And they also compared him to George Russell, who was able to take a much tighter line during those sessions, and he would back off a bit, that he could have a tighter exit and get on the gas. And better, meaning he was happier with the rear end. Hamilton went from 8th to 7th in the Grand Prix with that one pass, but let's be fair, that was a kind of a Japan Suzuka ball. Now, although he didn't get into specific details, he said, and this is Lewis, we found something on the car that has been underperforming for the last 3 races. 3! So he said, I'm really hoping that when it is fixed, I will start getting better results. I'm losing over a 10th a lap with the issue we have. I'm hoping at the next race it's fixed. Now, we don't know what that is, and Ferrari have not really revealed it either. Is it something to do with the new floor that may or may not be coming in Bahrain? We don't know. But he's currently 8th in the Drivers' Championship, 15 points. And that's 47 down championship leader Lando Norris. And at this point, you start to question, is he even going to have a chance at the title? Never say never. There are a lot of races. But Fred Vassar believes the Scuderia are making inroads on McLaren's advantage. He said, I didn't spend the winter to have expectations from race 1 that we would be there or there. But just going to Australia to race and try to get the best from what we've had. And he said we had exactly the same approach last year. We were able to come back after the first couple of races. We were 6/10 off on average, and we were able to come back during the season. Yeah, and they absolutely were. Some suggested that the Ferrari was one of the fastest cars at the end of the season, in some conditions faster than McLaren. I mean, remember Monza. So that's quite interesting, I think. But more on Fred Vassar. He's come out and said it's probably going to be a Quali Championship. What does he mean by that? Well, one word. 2 actually. No, 2 words. Dirty air. And that's going to be a problem in 2025. So, every 25 F1 season so far has been won from pole. Yes, the Australian Grand Prix was the closest one that wasn't, but it was. And obviously we've only had 3 Grand Prix, so we don't need to start, getting our pitchforks and torches yet. But the Japanese Grand Prix, let's be fair, it's not going to be billed as one of F1 classics. Now, as we know, it's not particularly easy to pass at Suzuka unless you're Kimi Raikkonen in the 2005 McLaren on the last lap on Fisichella. But DRS has generally been kind of ineffective, possibly because they made it too short. And there was a few straight line sections. I mean, the only other passing place is the hairpin, especially if you're Kamui Kobayashi. But the other factor at play is this dirty air problem. Now, the current generation of cars in 2022, it's really easy to follow cars. It's getting harder and harder as the aerodynamics are getting more and more sophisticated. And dirty air produce the ever-increasing desire to create outwashing air with the front wing, so make the air a bit more cleaner. Why? Well, when you're behind a car and you're quite close to a car, the air that's going over your car is not as efficient because it's getting disturbed by the car in front. So let's say you're not getting the maximum downforce through those fast corners that the car in front is getting, and that's why you struggle more. You slide more, your tyres go off more, and there we go. So, and this is quite significant. At the time of the new regulations, it was estimated in F1's research that a 2021 spec car could lose up to 47% downforce when around 10 metres behind and around 35% at 20 metres. With the now outgoing rules, it is stated that its model showed an 18% downforce reduction at the 10 metre mark and 4% at 20 metre. Reduced downforce while showing also causes the car, the chasing car to slide. Fair enough. I mean, that was the initial rule set, but now we believe it's not going to be as good. Andrea said ultimately we keep adding aerodynamic downforce, which means that the losses are even bigger. So I think the dirty air is a problem, he said. We have even seen this in China. If you see Lewis, when he was in the lead of the sprint, he could do pretty much whatever he wanted, even if the tyre was damaged, and that really did help Lewis Hamilton win the Chinese Grand Prix. So question marks over McLaren, question marks over Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton. Whatever next in Bahrain. Anyway, if you made it to the end, please give us a subscribe. That would be amazing. If you're not subscribed, if you are, just watching this is more than enough. But if you want to do that bit more, hit the like button or comment below and let us know what you think about F1 Japan as we go into the Bahrain Grand Prix. Anyway, on that note, thank you very, very much for watching. We'll speak to you soon. And above all else, stay safe.